Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Pivot, Addressing Global Problems Through Local Action by Steve Hamm, narrated by Shawn Compton. Publisher's note: in this audio edition, you may hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Introduction. In the late 1950s, my family lived in a tidy ranch house in Leawood, Kansas, a suburb south of Kansas City. At the time, Leawood was in the zone where suburban streets began to give way to seemingly endless cornfields stretching to the horizon. We had a small stream running through our backyard. My friends and I spent hours playing back there. I remember when I began to notice the deaths of wild creatures. At first, I would discover lifeless little bird bodies on the grass near the stream. Then there were more dead things: rabbits, mice, a turtle. At some point, we started burying the dead animals. We had a little wildlife graveyard. We didn't know it at the time, but we were experiencing something that became known later as the Silent Spring, not as a metaphor, but as a vivid fact of life. Silent Spring, of course, was the book published in 1962 by biologist Rachel Carson. It documented the adverse environmental effects caused by the indiscriminate use of synthetic pesticides, including dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane, commonly known as DDT. It seems likely that DDT, or one of its chemical cousins, had been killing wild things in our backyard. While we lived the American dream in our suburban ranch house, wild animals nearby were experiencing the American nightmare. Carson accused the chemical industry of misleading the public about the risks posed by its products and the government of turning a blind eye to problems. The book was met with a storm of criticism and denial from the chemical industry and its defenders. In spite of the blowback, Silent Spring became a pivot point in environmental history. The book awakened people to the dangers of pesticide use in agriculture. It led to the creation of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and to laws and regulations in the United States and elsewhere designed to protect the environment and our species. Those protections included a global ban on the use of DDT, except under extreme circumstances. A pivot point. Now we're at yet another potential pivot point. COVID-19 and its variants started spreading rapidly worldwide in 2020, sickening tens of millions of people, killing more than 1 million, bringing the global economy to a screeching halt, and provoking civil unrest. Angry men carrying assault rifles threatened the lives of American politicians in and around state capitol buildings. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, after at first making light of the virus, nearly died after contracting it. This has been the worst infectious disease outbreak since the flu epidemic of 1918. The COVID-19 crisis is a wake-up call. It smacks us with the realization that we face serious risks from a wide variety of natural disasters, including viruses, earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires, droughts, and sea level rise. Many of these threats are associated with climate change. We are not prepared to deal with them. Even worse is that the way we structure society and live our lives make us more vulnerable to these calamities and tend to make them worse. In addition, we poison ourselves and the planet with pollutants and eat unhealthy food. It's like we're daring nature to take revenge on us for all of the crap we have given it since Homo sapiens began wiping out other animal species starting thousands of years ago. Now we threaten ourselves with our own extinction, or, if that prospect seems far-fetched, we at least face a not-too-distant future where the human condition, for a vast majority of humans, is far worse than it is today, and billions of people live in abject misery. If this happens, it will be our own fault. COVID-19 devastates us. Like climate change, it's a catastrophe of global proportions, but it also creates an opportunity. COVID-19 has taught us that all humans are deeply connected and we share the same fate. If we join forces, act now, and act boldly, we have an opportunity to make fundamental investments and changes in the way we operate as a species that might slow the advance of global warming and otherwise improve the prospects for future generations. In a way, COVID-19 is similar to the catharsis astronauts experience as they traverse the near reaches of the universe in their spacecraft. They peer out of tiny portholes and observe with awe that blue, cloud-swept orb in the distance, the planet Earth. It's a reminder of how small and insignificant we are in the great scheme of things, and that we have much more in common with one another than the differences that divide us. The inimitable Carl Sagan summoned such feelings in his 1994 book Pale Blue Dot, which was inspired by a photograph of Earth taken by the Voyager 1 spacecraft on its way out of the solar system. Sagan wrote, "There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known." The message of the pale blue dot is even clearer and more urgent today than it was 26 years ago when Sagan's book was published. We are in crisis. We must preserve and cherish our planet and each other. Actually, we are beset by 4 global crises hitting at once. In addition to COVID-19 and climate change, many countries are struggling to come to terms with the toxic effects of racism, and almost every country faces intense stresses related to economic inequities. As the great Irish poet and playwright W.B. Yeats wrote in his poem The Second Coming, "Things fall apart. The center cannot hold." The 4 crises are closely interrelated. We have to solve all of them to solve any of them. Reconnecting. I was finishing my work on a previous book when the cluster of crises took hold. I was thinking about what to do next when the opportunity to develop this new book fell from the sky. Sitting at my computer on April 13th, 2020, at our apartment in New Haven, Connecticut, I received an alert from LinkedIn that a friend, Colin Harrison, had started a new role, that of co-founder and leader at Post-COVID-19 Scenarios Study. I knew Colin from my years working at IBM as a corporate storyteller. I had joined the company in 2009. The big attraction was IBM's Smarter Planet initiative. The company had assembled a portfolio of technologies and was helping cities, regions, and private companies use data to operate more efficiently. Colin was one of the thought leaders behind the Smarter Planet strategy. The LinkedIn alert was intriguing. I pinged Colin, and he quickly pinged back. Colin lives in Brookfield, Connecticut, an hour drive from my apartment, but we had not been in touch. We had both left IBM several years earlier. Colin told me via email that just a few weeks previously it had struck him that the COVID-19 crisis might induce people all over the world to rethink the way we live, and that governments might be willing to put a substantial slice of the money they invested into recovery into doing things differently, rather than investing simply in returning to what people think of as normal. Normal, he figured, is a path to planetary ruin. Colin had dashed off an email on March 20th to a dozen associates proposing a study of the connections between the COVID-19 phenomenon and the critical natural and human-made systems that contribute most directly to the sustainability of life on the planet. The results of the study, he figured, might help convince government policymakers to change direction and invest to create a more sustainable society. Several of the people to whom Colin sent his email reacted positively. One of them was Peter Head, chair of Ecological Sequestration Trust, a nonprofit organization in the United Kingdom that focuses on improving the sustainability of cities. Peter is a famous bridge builder and environmentalist. Colin, Peter, and a handful of others decided to organize a global virtual collaboration of engineers, scientists, city planners, faith leaders, educators, and others to do the research Colin had suggested. The goal of their study would be to understand how COVID-19 was affecting society and to learn lessons from the crisis that would help humanity become more resilient to future pandemics, while also putting it on a path to achieve sustainability goals. The group would be a new sort of social enterprise, using business and scientific techniques to solve society's problems without seeking a financial return. Peter, Colin, and others mapped out a way forward. They would use a portfolio of technology and thinking tools to communicate, gather information, and analyze it. Experts assembled in small teams would take on 20 or more topics and generate hypotheses, test them, and fashion proposals. The group would form alliances with leaders in cities or regions around the world and work with them to apply their new thinking through demonstration projects to help make those places more sustainable and resilient. Essentially, the project would be a solutions factory. They would also develop and present proposals to a number of policy-making bodies, including the G20, an international forum for governments and central bankers from 19 countries and the European Union, and COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which was originally to be held in Glasgow, Scotland in late 2020, but was pushed into 2021 by the COVID-19 crisis. Weeks into the initiative, its leaders decided to give it a name: Pivot Projects. The reasoning was clear. Things had fallen apart. It was time to pivot in a new direction. During a Zoom discussion, one of the participants likened the situation to a swing bridge that normally carries auto or train traffic, but pivots to let boat traffic pass by. He said, "What if the bridge swings back but points off in a different direction?" That's the kind of pivot this group was looking for. Answering the call. An amazing collection of people came together around this initiative. They were all volunteers, doing nature's work in addition to their day jobs. Nothing they suggested or did was motivated by a desire for financial gain. While many of the participants had footholds in academia, most were engineers and business people rather than scholarly researchers. They were believers in multidisciplinary approaches to problem solving. A number of them had dedicated much of their professional lives to making the world work better. Some saw this project as their best chance to move the needle on sustainability, and perhaps it would be the last one, because the window seems to be closing on the opportunity to reduce global warming and avoid the worst ravages of climate change. Others are young people focused on breaking the human bus before it heads off the environmental cliff. One of those, Shulamit Morris Evans, had earlier glued herself to the turnstiles in an office building in London to protest the environmental damage caused by fossil fuels. Another, Manish Shah, a student in Nepal, hoped to bring one of the demonstration projects to his impoverished country, teaching young Nepali farmers to practice regenerative agriculture. The group took on some of the biggest and most complex scientific, health, and environmental issues in the world, but they also thought deeper. In the early days of the COVID-19 crisis, many people asked anew and with increased urgency about the meaning of life. Do we have some higher purpose as individuals and as a species? How should we live? What do we owe to future generations? The Pivot Projects group decided early that it would begin by asking the essential questions of meaning and spirituality and justice and purpose, and would consider them in each of the more than 20 work streams. They also wrestled with some of the daunting moral and ethical challenges that emerge whenever society contemplates a significant change in direction. With nearly every major move in society, there are winners and losers. If you don't burn coal anymore, miners are put out of work, and mining communities are devastated. If people choose to behave more considerately to one another and to future generations, they may have to give up freedoms and perhaps personal wealth today. How do we find a fair balance between the interests of the individual and the many, between today's humans and those in the future? Pivot Projects was an audacious scheme. Nobody had ever tried this before. A group of several hundred people from around the world would connect virtually, agree on a way forward, and work collaborative and unselfishly, with the goal of producing novel yet practical recommendations for changing society. They'd engage with cities and regions around the world and attempt to get new initiatives launched even as the devastation of COVID-19 continued to sicken and kill people and hobble economies. And all of this would happen in a matter of a few months. In fact, if today's collaboration and data analytics technologies didn't exist, this quest would have been impossible. In a matter of weeks, the Pivot Project's team stitched together a collection of powerful technologies, including collaboration applications and artificial intelligence tools that are on the cutting edge of what's possible. They created a process on the fly that was built on a foundation of years of experience in getting things done, and they reacted flexibly when barriers blocked the path forward. Perhaps their work will emerge as a model for using technology to manage quick, multidisciplinary collaborations to take on complex and critical topics in the future. There was no assurance that the team would produce valuable analysis, insights, and recommendations. This mashup of experts was making things up as it went along. Some of the early meetings were chaotic. There was an impulse to try to do too much all at once. At the same time, there was no assurance that the world's leaders would listen. While the United Nations and Western European government leaders had pledged to rebuild green, the U.S. federal government spent billions of dollars propping up fossil fuel industries and took advantage of the crisis to roll back environmental safeguards. It was a lot to get one's head around. Still, those involved agreed that it was worth a try. The Embedded Journalist. I wanted to give it a try too. Within minutes of learning about the project, I saw the potential of embedding myself in it, much like journalists are placed in military units during war. I would sit in on Zoom meetings, interview the participants frequently, and follow the path of this bold yet uncharted journey. Maybe there would be a book in it. Well, it turned out there is a book. My goal in writing The Pivot was twofold. First, even though the world is awash in proposals for addressing climate change, I sensed that this process might reveal practical new ideas that would be tried on the local level and then replicated around the world. In other words, the book might be useful. Second, I believed that the story of the journey that this unusual group of people undertook would be compelling and could yield fascinating insights about humanity and society. In a sense, their quest was a microcosm of the efforts by people around the world to make society more sustainable and resilient in the wake of COVID-19. In this way, the book would bear a resemblance to Tracy Kidder's great work of nonfiction, The Soul of the New Machine, where he followed the path of a group of engineers as they designed a novel type of computer in the 1970s under intense deadline pressure. In the case of pivot projects, the new machine was not a device but a new way of getting things done. The new machine is collaborative intelligence, bringing together people with a wide variety of points of view and areas of expertise, and using modern analytics tools to help address global problems through local action. During the early months of being embedded in the project, I struggled with the principle of journalistic objectivity. As a journalist, I have written countless articles about business, information technology, innovation, and globalization. I strive to take and express objective views, but clearly this was a different animal than my usual journalistic pursuits. I am committed to the cause embraced by pivot projects, saving our planet and our species. During the many early meetings, I contributed ideas and feedback with the goal of helping the enterprise succeed. I became a participant observer. After a time, as I wrapped up the first draft of the book, I became mainly a participant. I saw that, in order for progress to be made against climate change, many people would have to commit time and energy to working with others to help make the world more sustainable and resilient, and I would be one of them. That's when I realized that the book was not just the story of a remarkable group of people and their quest, but it was also a call to action, urging you to join with others to get stuff done. I came to think of it as a do-it-yourself guide to saving our planet. My own pivot project's journey took me full circle. In the beginning, I ventured out into a global initiative born on the digital magic carpet of Zoom, Slack, and Google Docs. But in the end, I also returned home, inspired by pivot projects, to engage more fully in my own small city, a microcosm of the blue dot, to try to help restore a river that runs through the city and to improve life for people who live near its banks. This book is about the beginnings of a journey, not about the destination. That's true for me and for pivot projects. Unlike the typical business book, this one doesn't lay out a series of bullet point prescriptions about how to make an organization, an industry, or the world work better. Neither does the pivot projects. Both the book and the group are about learning, engaging, and working with others to get something done. In stable times, it's easier to make plans and then execute them. In times of chaos and uncertainty, solutions to problems have to emerge from engagement and experimentation. How the book is organized. In the coming chapters, you will hear about how the pivot projects took shape in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis and how the participants did their work. I'll lay out their proposals and explore the initial reactions to them. You'll meet a number of the notable leaders and participants and the young people who want to help turn their dreams of a better world into a reality. You'll see the group engage with communities and try to turn ideas into practical actions. And you'll learn about complexity, systems thinking, artificial intelligence, and resilience, the tools and concepts that underlie the group's work. Between chapters, you'll hear brief profiles of some of the participants. Here's how the story is organized. Chapter 1. The Mission. How the project got started and what the founders hoped to accomplish. Chapter 2. The Core Team. Who they are, where they came from, and the roles they played. Chapter 3. The Scrum. How the group did its work and how participants explored their own humanity. Chapter 4. Struggles. The challenges they faced and how they tried to overcome them. Chapter 5. Remapping the World. How the group made conceptual models of human-built and natural systems. Chapter 6. The Theory of Everything. Exploring the belief that systems thinking is the key to solving the world's most complex problems. Chapter 7. Rethinking Resilience. A fresh new look at how we view and manage risk. Chapter 8. Talking to Robots. The group tested the idea that humans and machines can accomplish things together that neither could do as well on their own. Chapter 9. Points of Light. A new model for engaging with cities and regions. Chapter 10. Places. How Pivot Projects engages with places around the world to help them become more sustainable, resilient, and livable. Chapter 11. Bright Ideas. Proposals for policymakers and solutions for communities. Chapter 12. Connecting. What did Pivot Projects accomplish in its early days? What did we learn from it? And where does it go from here? The Return of the Raptors. During the COVID-19 lockdown in the spring of 2020, I was paddling my kayak on a small lake about 5 miles from my home, and I saw a bald eagle perched in a tree beside the lake. The raptor sat there for a few minutes, then swooped down and scooped an inattentive fish from just under the surface of the lake. Burdened with the weight of the struggling fish in its talons, the eagle flew in concentric circles to gain altitude and perched in a tree to devour the fish. It was the first time I had seen a bald eagle up close in Connecticut. In the middle of the 20th century, at the time the young me was creating a wildlife graveyard alongside a creek in Kansas, the bald eagle was nearly driven to extinction in the contiguous United States. The use of DDT, along with loss of habitat and illegal hunting, had caused the eagle population to collapse from several 100,000 in the 1700s to less than 1,000 in the 1960s. According to the American Eagle Foundation, today, there are hundreds of thousands of bald eagles in the lower 48 again, and plenty in Connecticut. The restoration of the species is one of the great success stories in the history of wildlife conservation. This near miracle happened because the people of the United States and their elected representatives recognized that the bald eagle was worth saving. Politicians established laws and regulations designed to protect the eagle and other wild things. This was part of a broader recognition that our fate is inextricably intertwined with that of other species. We saved the eagle, in part, to save ourselves. Now we're at another potential pivot point in the relationship between humans and the rest of nature. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring catalyzed a great movement, environmentalism, 60 years ago. Will the COVID-19 catastrophe bring about another movement powered by enlightenment and resolve? Will humans around the globe decide to take this opportunity to reconsider how we live, to recognize that it is unsustainable, and to take action to set themselves on a more sustainable path? This is my hope. If this book plays even a tiny role in helping that pivot happen, I will be immensely gratified. 1. The Mission. April 22, 1970 marked the first Earth Day celebration in the United States. On that remarkable day, millions of people took to the streets and public spaces to pledge allegiance to a newly minted cause, environmentalism. Things as we know them are falling apart. A whole society is realizing it must drastically change course. Dennis Hayes, one of the organizers, told a crowd in Washington, D.C. Within months, the government established the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and passed the Clean Air Act. It was the hopeful beginning for what was to become a global environmental movement. On the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which had been renamed International Mother Earth Day by the United Nations, Peter Head took a coffee break in the backyard garden of his home in Beckenham, a suburb of London. Peter was the chief executive officer of Ecological Sequestration Trust, a non-profit organization in the United Kingdom focused on environmental sustainability. He had been pressing for a more sustainable society for decades, first as a bridge builder, then as a city planner, and then, starting in 2011, as the head of the trust. Peter was a respected leader in the sustainability field. He contributed to the development of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and had authored or co-authored a number of high-profile policy reports laying out the case for sustainability. For his engineering and climate change work, he had been awarded the Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II in 2011. For his sustainability work, he had been named by The Guardian newspaper as one of 50 people who could save the planet, and he was cited by Time magazine as one of 30 global eco-heroes. In his backyard, he contemplated some of the small wonders of nature. The garden was in full bloom: azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias, bluebells, and more. It was full of birds as well. While enjoying his coffee, Peter saw a fledgling nuthatch fly up onto a branch of large silver birch and then perch there, flapping its wings uncertainly, and then fly off. It was a tiny thing with a black head, gray wings, and white chest. "I spent the day bathed in birdsong. It helps a lot," he remarked later. Peter needed soothing because he was deeply disturbed at the state of the world. 50 years after the first Earth Day, things were still falling apart, only more so. COVID-19 was ravaging a world already beset by climate change. That's why, just a few weeks earlier, Peter and a handful of colleagues had organized a global collaborative research initiative. Initially, the Post-COVID-19 Research Study, later named Pivot Projects, aimed at leveraging the sense of urgency generated by COVID-19 to help set society on a more sustainable and resilient path. Peter had hatched the plan along with Colin Harrison, a retired IBM executive living in the United States who was an expert in the smart cities domain, and Rick Robinson, a highly regarded city planner in London. The idea was to assemble a group of experts in a wide variety of fields and put them to work building ontological models of some of the primary natural and human systems that determine how the world works. They would feed the models into an artificial intelligence, AI, computing system, ask questions of the system, and then work collaboratively with the AI to develop practical solutions. The plan was to craft proposals for international policymakers and to work with cities and regions.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?